I stumbled upon a haunted live stream that revealed unbelievable terror. I never should have opened that door. I was just scrolling late at night, the glow of my screen illuminating the darkness around me. The quiet of my room was comforting, but it felt like something was lurking. I clicked on the link. It was a channel dedicated to exploring abandoned places, and tonight, they claimed to be broadcasting live from an infamous haunted hotel. My heart raced. The camera panned shakily, capturing decaying walls and flickering lights. The air felt heavy, like it was charged with a sinister energy just waiting to snap. I leaned closer. A chill crept up my spine as shadows twisted unnaturally across the screen. The hosts sounded nervous. You could hear the tremor in their voices as they dared each other to enter rooms that had been closed for decades. Whispers echoed through the stream, soft and insidious, almost as if the old hotel itself had come alive. Then, there was a crash. The camera jerked to the right, capturing a door swinging open on its own. Darkness poured from it like a malevolent mist. I swallowed hard, my pulse quickening. The chat exploded with frantic messages. "Did you see that? Get out of there. It's not safe." The screen flickered. For a brief moment, I thought I saw something move in the shadows. A figure? I squinted, leaning toward my screen as if that would help me see clearer. My heart thudded in my chest. They moved further inside. I could almost smell the dampness, the decay. It was overwhelming. I felt the chill settle in my bones, the kind of cold that seeps under your skin. My fingers trembled over my keyboard, typing frantic messages, but my thoughts raced. What was going to happen next? Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream erupted through the stream, so raw and filled with terror that it made the hair on my arms stand upright. I feebly clicked around, but my grip tightened on the mouse as the camera dropped. It tumbled, falling to the ground, and the last image was of a dark figure looming over the hosts, blocking the flickering light. I gasped. The stream went black. My heart pounded, echoing in the silence of my room. The dread settled deeper. Was it all just a trick? Or had they really unleashed something unexplainable? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The silence in my room grew thicker, pressing against my chest like a weight. I swiped at the screen repeatedly, trying to refresh the channel, desperate for any sign of life from the hosts. My hands shook, not just from fear but from an unsettling sensation that pooled in my gut, pulling me into its grasp. The chat had fallen eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded. Suddenly, the stream flickered back to life, but it wasn't the same. The camera was now positioned low to the ground, capturing only the floor of the hotel's entrance hall. Shadows twisted in the corners, and the grainy quality made everything seem dreamlike and surreal, as if I were peering into another world. The distant sound of footsteps echoed, but they weren't human. A dragging sound stirred the air, like claws scraping against the wooden floorboards. I could hear my own breathing, shallow and panicked, stealing glances at the door behind me. I felt exposed, vulnerable, as if whatever had invaded that hotel was now keenly aware of me. I swallowed hard, a sense of dread twisting into determination. You need to see this, I whispered to myself, though it felt foolish to utter the words in such desolation. Help us, a faint whisper wafted through the speaker, too faint at first for me to fully comprehend. It clawed at my consciousness. Again, the voice emerged, louder this time, a desperate plea emanating from the shadows. Please help us, who's there? I uttered impulsively, surprised by my own audacity and the sheer foolishness of it. The voice responded, dripping with despair, or trapped images flickered across the screen, frantic faces, twisted expressions, as they stumbled into a room choked with darkness. A single light barely illuminated the space, revealing an array of rusty chains hanging from the ceiling, swinging as though agitated by an unseen force. The hosts were visible now, peering into the abyss before them, confusion etched on their faces. Panic was palpable in their eyes. Then, from the shadows emerged a horrid resemblance of a human form, limbs elongated unnaturally, its features indistinguishable yet wrong. It loomed closer, the distorted figure leading the way to a grotesque tableau of what was left of its victims. The screen seized for a moment, and I felt a compulsion to turn away, but an invisible hand grasped my chin, forcing me to watch. A loud grunt echoed through the stream, followed by a brutal thud that vibrated against the walls of my own room, knocking the breath from my lungs. The camera quivered, and I saw one of the hosts stagger back into the frame, his face a mask of horror, the presence behind him flickering like a mirage. The chat erupted in wild comments again, people frantically pleading. Get out! It's too late! Run! My pulse quickened. I wanted to type something, to warn them, but my fingers fell still, frozen in horror as the screen darkened again. When it brightened once more, one host was gone, swallowed by the overwhelming darkness, while the other stood motionless, staring vacantly into the void. Where are you? He whispered, voice quaking with a blend of fear and confusion. For a moment, the camera tightened on his face, revealing wild eyes filled with unshed tears and unshakable terror. Behind him, shadows congealed into a shape, a tangible entity coalescing from the abyss. Help us, it spoke, the echo of its plea twisting and burgeoning into a cruel laugh that shivered along my spine, rendering me paralyzed. The host turned slowly, and in that fleeting second, my heart plummeted into the depths of despair. The figure lunged, darkness spilling from its form like ink, and suddenly the stream cut to black once again. My heart thudded with a furious rhythm. I could hardly breathe, fear constricting around my throat. Was this some sort of sick joke? But as I tried to turn away, a notification pinged on my phone. It was a text from an unknown number. The message sent a chill racing through me. Stop watching, it's not safe. They know you're there. The screen went black, and in the silence of my room, something shifted behind me, and I sensed eyes watching, waiting. I sat motionless, paralyzed by the command in that message. The stillness in my room felt like a living thing, an entity breathing down my neck. I could sense the weight of darkness pooling just behind my shoulder, thick and malignant. Stop watching, it's not safe. The words reverberated in my mind like a haunting echo. I knew I should heed the warning, yet a morbid curiosity lashed me to the screen. I flicked my gaze back to the dim glow of my phone. The chat had erupted again, frantic and chaotic. Messages poured in, the words flashing by like a manic slideshow. They know. Get out. Turn off your phone. Then, suddenly, a new message caught my eye. I can see you. The chills that raced down my spine made the hairs on my arms stand on end. My breath hitched as my heart drummed a frantic tempo. I stole a glance behind me, half expecting a pair of predatory eyes to meet my own. The room was dark, the shadows gathering like an inky mist. I succumbed to the far-off whispers beyond the chat. Something trembled deep within me, urging me to disconnect, to flee this nightmare. But my fingers danced over the screen, coaxed by the desperation that had overtaken me, pulling me further into the dark unknown. Just then, the stream flickered back to life once again with a shaky camera perspective. This time, it revealed a close-up of a wall, just a few feet from the camera, filled with indentations and cryptic symbols. They twisted and squirmed in an almost serpentine fashion, creating a nightmarish tapestry of unearthly etchings. My breath caught at the sight. It felt akin to looking into a broken mirror reflecting madness. Then emerged the voice, low, menacing, layered with a texture that promised far worse than it unveiled. "You shouldn't have come," it intoned, reverberating against the frigid silence that clung to my surroundings. The screen jerked violently, shifting back to what appeared once more to be the entrance hall. The camera now revealed something altogether unimaginably, a series of mirrors, each capturing warped reflections of twisted faces and shadowy figures behind them. They whispered my name as if it were a sacrament, the sound swelling into a grotesque chant that sparkled with malevolence. "Open your eyes, see the truth." Each utterance twisted deeper into my mind, and I felt an electric shock of fear seize control. Suddenly, the view panned to the right, revealing an ominous figure cloaked in shadows, obscured yet brimming with malice. I could feel it grinning, if that was even possible, beneath its shroud, a knowing, sinister smile that teased the edges of comprehension. It leaned forward, its intentions unfathomable, and the screen began to bleed static, pulsating ominously. The chat exploded again, urging frantic warnings. "It's here. Don't let it in." But the stream continued to zoom in on the inscrutable darkness, and I felt a tether nearly snap within me, a thread holding me to sanity. In that moment of terror, I dared to let out a half-dreamed whisper, "What do you want?" The way the shadows recoiled as if struck surprised me and then filled me with an even colder dread. But the figure paused, lingering in that void, and gleamed with malevolence. "You are chosen." The room around me shifted, the air heavy with silence as I began to lose the ability to distinguish where their world ended and mine began. A sudden crash echoed from behind me, a sharp sound that shattered my fragile sense of reality. Was it just a branch hitting the window, some benign explanation for the terror filling my soul, or something more sinister? Fear gripped my heart tightly, the primal instinct to flee screamed louder than rational thought. And then abruptly, the camera cut away to the side of the hall, revealing the host on the ground, eyes wide, fear-stricken. The edges of his vision blurred into shadow as he whimpered, "It's in the mirrors. We're trapped." Just then, I saw him jerk violently, as if gripped by an unseen force. I clutched my phone, knuckles white with determination, feeling that unseen entity gasping through the air, beckoning me, drawing me in. I wasn't simply watching anymore, I was part of this nightmare. As the screen glitched and distorted, the last echo finally faded, but the camera remained on the host, shaking and helpless, mouth opening in a silent scream while something from the depths of the mirror reached through to touch his shoulder, an arm of shadow curling around his throat. I felt my phone buzz again, and with trembling hands, I looked down at the latest notification, blood draining from my face. It read, "You shouldn't have watched. Now it's hungry." At that moment, the lights flickered in my room, plunging me into strobing darkness. I turned, dread pooling at the base of my spine, drowned in the realization that whatever essence haunted me had already begun to unfurl its grip. And the keen and excruciating heartbeat it spoke, encircling my ears with a slimy slither. "Now it's your turn." The shadows coalesced, and I felt myself yearning to know more, yet horrified by the knowledge I might never escape. The shadows in my room thickened, twisting like black smoke, pressing in closer. My heartbeat echoed like a drum, pulsing in tandem with the sinister whisper that curled around my thoughts. "Now it's your turn." The words were laced with a tantalizing promise. A primal fear wrapped around me, but a part of me, a dark and lonely fragment, yearned to cross the threshold into that shared nightmare, to understand the presence that now clung to me like a shroud. The live stream flickered again, the screen revealing more of the host's agonizing ordeal. The low growl that erupted from his throat sent chills racing down my spine, a guttural sound laden with despair. "It won't let me go," he gasped, his voice cracking like glass under pressure. His eyes darted fearfully, mere moments away from being swallowed entirely by the encroaching dark. I could see the shadows crawling across him, slick and sentient, inching closer with every breath he drew. Out of instinct, I glanced back toward the now dangerously foreboding corner of my room. The darkness seemed to shift, undulating as if it had gained a life of its own. A cold sweat coated my skin, I could hardly separate myself from the images engulfing me. Every potential escape route flared briefly in my mind, but the magnetic pull of curiosity and terror kept my feet glued to the floor. The host suddenly jerked forward, clutching at the ground, clawing desperately as an unseen force tightened around his throat. I felt a scream building in my chest, but the very air felt like dirt plastered over my lips, suffocating me with its oppressive weight. "You need to get out," he shouted hoarsely before a shadowy tendril gripped his mouth, silencing the warning forever. Suddenly, the camera view whirred, sending the feed into chaos as it spun wildly within the dimly lit hall. I leaned closer, entranced by the bustling imagery, each glimpse highlighting the crawling dread clinging to every corner. More symbols marred the walls, their ancient designs spiraling into one another. They felt alive, pulsating with energy as though they craved a presence, the very essence from which I drew strength. "Please, it's too late for me, but you can stop it." His voice echoed in my mind frantically as ghostly figures began materializing around him, rising from the mirrors like vapor. Their faces, twisted and anguished, floated behind him, mouths stretched wide in silent cries. Each apparition seemed to reach, stretch, and strain toward the lens toward me. Suddenly, the live stream caught a glimpse of something unfathomable. Beyond the mirror's surface, a realm of pure darkness spread, intersected with flashes of grotesque figures writhing in torment. Each reflection I saw seemed to distort further, splintering the very essence of the reality I knew, a rippling sea of torment. And then I saw it. A dark figure, akin to the one standing before the mirror, but this one carried an unearthly gravitas. It moved with sinister elegance, weaving through the other shadows, a predator hidden in their thrall. My breath hitched as it turned, locking its gaze on me right through the screen as if it knew what I was feeling, the fear and yearning sitting hand in hand in the pit of my stomach. In that split second, the chat flooded my screen, desperate pleas and warnings. "It can sense you. Get away from the screen." But my fingers were numb, I was paralyzed with dread as the figure edged closer, the darkness whispering sweet promises into my ear, filling me with an awful want, a hunger to explore the depths of that malignant void. A pulsating beat emerged from my phone, matching the frantic rhythm of my heart, urging me to lean in closer, to touch the other side. The host began to convulse, terror etched into his features as fragments of the dark entity began to loom behind him, edging into reality. "Don't look. Don't let it take you," he wailed in a final fit, terror erupting like a parasitic seed in the air between us. Then, the screen shattered into static, and for that cursed moment, the echo of reality stuttered. I felt the echoes of fear wrap tighter around me, as if I had been bound by chains of darkness. The sensation of weightlessness occurred instantly as my breath escaped me. It was happening. I understood it now. Whatever existed behind the screen, within those mirrors, had found me. The lights flickered dangerously before plunging into complete darkness. I gasped, sinking into the void, my senses lost amidst the whispers circling my mind. Then, a cold touch grazed my wrist, icy fingers caressing my skin, a clawed grip like a skeletal hand reaching out just inches away. Panic surged like a tidal wave, but a voice lilted through the stillness, smooth and inviting, "You're one of us now." I stumbled backward, grappling for the edge of reality, but as I collided with the wall, it felt strangely supple, as if the very structure of the room had become a part of its sinister transformation. I could feel the walls closing in. I was no longer in control. The chilling realization crept in. Whatever had clawed its way through the screen was here, hungry, hungrier than I had ever dared to imagine, and then, in a heartbeat, the lights burst back on, illuminating the room laden with shadows twisting around me. In front of my petrified eyes, the mirror near my bed rippled and warped, revealing not my reflection, but the shadowy abyss of that realm, pulling me ever closer. The edges of horror blurred, and with a jolt, I could see there were eyes, so many eyes staring back at me, all filled with a violent longing, and at that moment, I could feel their hunger rise, their desire for me. Then, finality struck as something clawed through the mirror, and I couldn't tear my eyes away. My breath caught in my throat. Something, or someone was coming through. And before I could scream, it lunged. My scream erupted as the figure broke through the veil of the mirror, a whirlpool of darkness spilling into my room. It was visceral and dreadfully real, a silhouetted monstrosity with elongated limbs, silhouetted in hues of black and despair. Each frantic movement drew in shadows from the corners of my sanctuary, as if my very home was becoming an extension of that other world. The air crackled with an electric tension, vibrating against my skin, crawling beneath my flesh. I felt rooted to the ground, a puppet tangled in invisible threads as the entity twisted and contorted like smoke caught in a gale. It turned its glowing, hollow eyes upon me, shimmering with intent. A deep sense of familiarity washed over me. I could see the remnants of the host's anguish playing across its features, panic and hopelessness etched within that. I tried to tear my gaze away, but it was as if the being drew energy from my fear, feeding on the very essence of my terror. It stepped nearer, and I could almost hear the soft susurration of its thoughts wrapping around my mind, luring me with echoes of promises, dark desires, and twisted longing. "Welcome home," it cooed, its voice slithering like a serpent through the air. The door slammed shut behind me, trapping me inside this nightmare. The walls throbbed around me, pulsing rhythmically, syncopated with my racing heart. I turned to flee, but the figure blocked my path with eerie agility, each movement a flickering image of pain. I saw faces trapped in its shadow, ghastly visages screaming silently, the reflections of those who had been consumed, just like the host. "Help me," I mumbled, a desperate plea caught in the corners of my dry throat, but all I heard was a mocking laugh that echoed unnaturally, shaking my resolve. The figure extended a bony hand, fingers twisting unnaturally toward me, beckoning with sinister allure, a dance of seduction fraught with despair. In that moment, clarity hit me, a memory of the live stream, the vivid images of those who had succumbed before. My mind raced, struggling to remember any details that could save me from this impending horror. I grasped at strings of thought, frantically sifting through the fragments of the twisted fate of the host. Hadn't he mentioned some sacred words, a counter-curse to stave off the darkness? But as the shadows reached for me, I felt them seeping into my skin, the chill reminding me of every fear I had ever buried, the whispered regrets and the numbing cold of isolation. I forced myself to yell above the tormenting laughter, "You don't own me!" A flicker of surprise danced across the creature's grotesque face, but it quickly melted into rage. The kindness it had held turned sinister, revealing razor-sharp teeth. Suddenly, the air thickened, and the weight of malevolence crashed in, wrapping around my throat like a noose. I gasped for breath, the effort pulling me deeper into despair. "Your spirit belongs to us," it hissed, a dread-filled certainty crawling up my spine, as the room morphed around me, blurring the boundaries of reality and shadow. "The moment you looked into the mirror was your last." Desperation surged through my veins like wildfire, igniting a primal instinct to survive. The wall behind me seemed to shimmer, flickering as if I could break free through it. "No! I refuse to be your pawn!" I screamed, drawing raw power from the fight ignited within. In a moment of clarity, I spun toward the shattering mirror, its surface boiling like liquid darkness. I rushed toward it, my heart beating frantically in protest of my foolish endeavor. The grip of despair loosened, for a fleeting second, and I understood I had to confront it, face what dwelled beyond. But just as I reached the edge, the shadows surged back. A cacophony of screams haunted my ears as grotesque hands clawed outwards, snatching at the air, desperate to reclaim their prize. I inhaled, ready to plunge into the void, and then the wall behind me shattered into countless pieces. With that, I was abruptly caught in a maelstrom of blackness, and then everything went silent. Time stretched like an unseen hand, and the world around me contorted until there was only the echo of infinite yawning darkness. The sensation of weightlessness wrapped around me, and in that chilling moment of realization, I couldn't tell if I was dreaming or if I had truly stepped through to the other side. And as I drifted further, I heard a voice, an unmistakable whisper lacing through the shadows, entwined with dread. "Welcome to my realm." I dared to open my eyes, but the truth that met me was infinitely worse. I wasn't alone, I could feel them. They were all around me, lurking just out of sight, with yearning eyes and hungry whispers. And then the laughter came, a cacophony of monstrous voices, and all at once, they lunged. The faces morphed into fleeting images, twisted, skeletal expressions of those who had ventured too deeply into this dreadful realm. Their eyes shone with a haunting emerald glow, each pair a mirror reflecting my own fear back at me, pleading for escape while mocking my helplessness. I found myself enveloped in an otherworldly fog, thick and suffocating, as the ghostly figures began to emerge from the gloom. They circled me, their movements fluid and eerie. It was as if they had been waiting for me to step into their world, to strengthen the horrors that thrived in this neglected abyss. With each breath I took, their torment seeped into my lungs, dulling my senses and turning my blood to ice. "Join us," they whispered in unison, their voices a blend of agony and bliss, like a siren's call tangled in despair. "You belong here." I stumbled back, desperate to distance myself from their beckoning embrace. But in this realm, there was no retreat. The ground shifted beneath me, the very fabric of reality warped as I felt their curiosity prickling against my skin, an electric sensation, both terrifying and intoxicating. "Why do you resist?" A raspy voice, sweet yet laced with malice, slithered through the air. I turned, finding its Saursea figure standing apart from the swirling mass. The specter wore a mask of shadows, its features indistinguishable, but I sensed a knowing grin lingering beneath. "You have tasted the darkness. It is sweet, is it not? You long to unravel it. I know," I shouted, the defiance igniting a flicker of strength. "I won't succumb to you." With that, I pressed my fingers to my temples, straining my will against the invading whispers. Images flooded my mind, memories of sunlit days, laughter shared, all the moments of warmth that had once filled me. I clung to them like a lifeline, trying to anchor myself in reality, battling the creeping sensation of becoming just another lost soul, but shadows surged forward, an unrelenting tide of despair and hunger. I felt fingers graze my arms, cold as ice, pulling me closer, urging me to join their ranks. What I thought was solid ground rippled and pulsated, dragging me closer to the abyss from which they derived their strength. Join us, they repeated, relentless. We are all victims of the mirror's curse. We were once alive, just like you. You cannot resist, the cowlet is inevitable. With an effort born of desperation and a flicker of clarity, I gathered my resolve. Not inevitable, I gasped, if I can just find the way back. A storm ripped through the darkness, a howl of discontent rising from the gathering shadows. They recoiled, hissing as fragments of memory surged into the forefront of my mind. I remembered the figures from the live stream, their faces twisted in terror and regret, desperately clutching on to the fading remnants of their humanity. It's not your fault, I whispered, trying to reach them through the haze. Fight them. We have the power to overcome, but the shadows wouldn't hear my plea, their hunger eclipsing any shred of hope. They lunged toward me, their movements a blur, hungry for that last thread of resistance. Just as their hands were on the verge of breaking through, I darted away, propelled by instinct and an insatiable longing to escape. I raced forward, pushing through the fog until the shadows began to fragment, revealing what appeared to be a swirling vortex of light ahead. I sprinted toward it, desperately yearning for escape. But as I neared it, the heightened energy crackled like a storm, sparking fear and temptation in equal measure. Do you truly think you can leave? The raspy voice boomed behind me, unmistakably laced with malice. You belong to us now. The more you run, the closer we will become. Suddenly, the ground beneath me gave way, and I stumbled into a void, the vortex swallowing me whole as I plummeted into darkness once more. The world spun and twisted, as other voices joined the fray, all clamoring, each one pushing me toward despair. Amidst it all, a single scream pierced through the chaos, my own. It echoed, reverberating in and out of reality as I fought against the shadows, clawing for freedom. The last thing I saw before total engulfment was the faces of the damned, those who were lost to the mirror before me, reaching with silent urgency. As my scream faded into nothingness, I braced for the impact of whatever lay ahead, uncertainty clawing at my insides. Would I find a way to reclaim my own soul, or would I join the chorus of the cursed? And then, somewhere amidst the darkness, I felt a cold hand grip my ankle, tugging me down into the depths. The laughter grew louder, mingling with the screams of countless voices, their torment now intertwined with my own. That I gasped, the chilling statement forming in my mind, "Welcome to the reflection of your soul." The sensation of icy fingers tightening their grip on my ankle sent shards of panic coursing through me. I thrashed violently, desperate for release, but the more I fought, the tighter their grip became. My mind raced, darting between memories and horror, desperate for a semblance of hope. The laughter echoed around me, a wild cacophony of lost souls relishing in the chaos that enveloped me. You cannot escape what you are, they taunted, their mouths forming silent words beneath the shadows, distorted yet filled with a monstrous glee. As I was dragged deeper into the abyss, the brightness of the vortex faded until it was nothing more than a glimmer in the distance, swallowed by encroaching shadows. I closed my eyes, bracing myself for whatever awaited in this realm of despair, but the tugging sensation altered unexpectedly. The grip on my ankle vanished, leaving me suspended in midair. I dared to open my eyes, only to find the void around me shifting. A new light flickered to life, revealing silhouettes drifting in and out of focus. They hovered just beyond the reach of the shadows, tired eyes reflecting my own terror, yet unsettlingly still. "Help us," they whispered in a chorus, voices hollow, weaving a haunting melody that both drew me in and repelled me simultaneously. Fragments of their stories seeped into my consciousness, the anguished tales of those who had been consumed by their own darkness, their misdeeds playing out like a twisted stage play, each act steeped in pain and regret. One figure, a woman with long hair billowing like shadows writhed and twisted, clutched her stomach as if missing something precious. "I was trying to protect them," she moaned. "Trying to protect myself." A chill ran down my spine as I blinked away the dreadful images, clearing my mind. What if the shadows could reach my past? What if they had already started a sinister game with my memories? I shook my head, desperate to dispel the disquieting thoughts, feeling once more the weight of my past pushing down upon my spirit. "Join us," the figure coalition of sorrow beckoned, their arms extended, pulling at my very essence. Their need for solace was palpable, twining itself with my own sense of dread, betraying painful truths I wished to bury. "No!" I yelled, eyes wide with defiance. "I refuse to be a part of this." With the last vestiges of courage, I thrust both my hands forward, fighting against the gravity of despair that threatened to pull me down. Instantly, a reverberating surge cascaded throughout the void, a tumult of energy that echoed through the thrumming darkness. For a brief moment, I felt the weight of the figures vanish, their whispers reduced to frightened murmurs as they retreated from the burgeoning light that emanated from my defiance. But the respite was fleeting, the ground beneath me began to quake violently, fissures appearing in the surface, branches of shadow reaching toward me, clawing like the desperate hands of the damned. Waves of darkness rose, threatening to drown me, drowning out the last vestiges of hope. "You think you can rise above? You are bound to us, child," the raspy voice roared, echoing with the intensity of thunder as if the very fabric of reality rebelled against my refusal. With newfound strength, I twisted my body, kicking out against the turmoil as I pushed backward, racing toward the flicker of fading light that signaled my escape. It pulsed rhythmically, matching the beating of my heart, a beacon amidst the chaos. The faces of the tortured souls twisted around me, their cries amplifying, an anguished symphony that clawed at my sanity. "Save us!" The woman screamed, her twisted form emerging from the shadows, reaching towards me. "You have the power. We are bound." In that moment, a blur of panic and desperation enveloped me, and as I leaped toward the light, the shadows surged once more, blocking my path. Their tendrils scraped against my skin, leaving trails of ice that made my heart stall, the gnawing horror blooming at the edges of my mind. Just as I thought I'd been ensnared, lost to their fate, I felt a surge of energy, as something deep within me ignited like a forgotten flame. I was not merely running from the darkness, I could confront it. With an anguished howl, I threw out my arms, channeling everything I held dear, my memories of warmth, of life, against the oppressive weight of despair, but the shadows shrieked and convulsed, as if my defiance was a knife slicing through a dark tapestry. "You shall pay for this!" they screamed, their voices distorted, furious. The ground split violently, and as I stumbled backward, one final shadow lunged at me, a monstrous maw of darkness poised to consume all that I was. In that instant, with the ground quaking beneath my feet and the shadows closing in, I felt a sudden snap of sharpness against my reality. A mirror formed before me, jagged and steeped in darkness, and there, I beheld a reflection not of my own face, but of a twisted visage lurking within my soul. And then, before I could react, I heard a voice. It was chillingly familiar yet filled with venomous malice. Welcome back to the reflection of your soul, and I was drawn into that mirroring hell, the void behind swallowing me whole, leaving behind nothing but the echoes of the damned crying out for salvation. The darkness engulfed me, wrapping around my senses, disorienting every thought as I fell through a chasm of memories and fears. I clawed upward for the fleeting escape, but the shadows found my mind, a nightmarish current pulling me into the depths of my past. Suddenly, I was thrust into a world I thought long buried beneath the rubble of time. That I stood in my childhood home, the air thick with the scent of dust and despair. The once vibrant colors of the walls had faded, replaced by an unsettling gray, as if the very life had been drained from them. The shadows danced in the corners, whispering secrets I had long forgotten, and my stomach twisted at the familiar pangs of guilt. "Help us," a soft voice echoed, mingling with the creaking of the floorboards. My heart raced as I walked through the dimly lit hallway, each step revealing fragmented memory as my sister's laughter, my mother's gentle guidance, the day everything changed. As I entered the living room, my heart plummeted. There she was, the figure of my innocence, gazing lifelessly at the flickering screen of an old television. The static hissed and warped, coiling around the atmosphere like a serpent. My breath caught as I realized that it wasn't just her reflection on the glass, it was the essence of her spirit trapped in an endless loop of horror. Images of my childhood missteps paraded across the screen, hidden fights back home, whispered lies behind closed doors, acts of selfishness that had clung to my heart like a festering wound. Douc? Her voice, once a melody of warmth, transformed into a haunting echo. It cut through my mind like shards of glass. "You fed them. You brought this upon us. It's your fault." I know. I gasped, but the words fell flat against the weight of regret. The shadows tightened their grip around my throat as if forcing me to relive it. Witness my failures crystallized into a terrifying reality. The static surged, filling the room with voice screeches mingling with anguished cries, all pleading for release. I stumbled backward, only to bump into the threshold of the doorway. From behind me, the shadows stretched and quivered, coiling like serpents eager to swallow me whole. Tendrils slithered across my ankles, pulling me toward the darkened screen of misery, and then it happened. The static shifted, the room pulsed, and suddenly I was face to face with the reflection of myself, a dark, distorted version of what I had become. Hollow-eyed and malevolent, this reflection reached toward me, its fingers tapping against the cold surface of the television. "You can't hide, you can only join us in our anguish." The reflection began to transform, shifting into the faces of all those I had wronged, each visage marred with the pain my conscience barely acknowledged. My sister's eyes burned brightly with accusation, while my mother's sorrowful gaze pierced me with a mother's rage and heartbreak. "Join us," the shadow echoed, taunting and beckoning, "become the catalyst of our torment." Suddenly, there was a jolt, and the television screen cracked, sending shards of glass flying in all directions. Time fractured. The shadows whispered louder, and with every tick of that jagged mirror, I felt the weight of their despair settle deeper within myself. In a desperate bid for freedom, I remembered the flickering light, the glimmer of hope that had once contended with the encroaching shadows. Summoning every ounce of courage, I tore my gaze away from the vortex that threatened to engulf me and focused on that flickering spark from deep within. "Enough!" I roared, thrusting my hands forward as the static intensified, a storm of energy building within me. I could feel the vibrations of their anguish, feeding off my fear, and I willed myself to become a conduit of light and tenacity. As I reached inward, the ground beneath me trembled violently, and I felt the merging of our souls, a union of pain and defiance. But before I could unleash the light, the void throbbed with violent rage. The air thickened, shadows swirling, and an overwhelming presence emerged behind me, a figure cloaked in the very fabric of darkness itself. Its eyes, two burning coals of malice, bore into my soul with the promise of eternal suffering. "Where do you think you're going?" it hissed, the room trembling with the weight of its words. "You've only begun to comprehend what you've unleashed." My heart thundered as the figure stepped forward, the shadows coiled around its form like hungry vipers, ready to consume not just my past but the remnants of my very being. And just before it lunged at me, flashing teeth bright against the encroaching dark, it whispered a name that sent chills racing down my spine. "Welcome home, Cassandra." The world shattered around me, and in that split second, it felt as if the very boundaries of existence had been ripped apart, leaving a gaping void that threatened to swallow me whole. I blinked wildly as the darkness around me flickered, revealing a chaotic landscape. The living room morphed, transforming into an endless corridor of flickering lights, each doorway etched with memories that twisted and writhed. I felt my pulse quicken, drowning in a heightened awareness of the malevolence lurking just beyond my peripheral vision. It was as though the house no longer belonged to the realm of the living. It was a living tomb, a decaying heart pulsing with the hatred of those it had consumed. I turned on my heel, desperation clawing at my chest. I needed to escape, to find a way back to that elusive flickering light. But the corridor felt endless, stretching into the obsidian abyss. Each door I passed whispered a different story, fragments of lives long extinguished. They begged for remembrance, for someone to bear witness to the horrors contained within. One door caught my eye, an old wooden frame barely clinging to its hinges, the paint peeling away like forgotten skin. As I reached for the handle, an icy breath grazed my neck. I froze, shivers trickling down my spine as the sensation shifted, wrapping around my wrist. "Help us," it breathed, a low murmur echoing from within. It was a voice I had known, a soft and melodic echo of my sister's laugh, now distorted and haunted. I hesitated, then pulled it open. The room beyond was cloaked in shadows, with the acrid scent of mold and decay filling the air. A single, flickering bulb dangled from the ceiling like a withered fruit, revealing the horrors within. My sister, Lily, stood there, her eyes wide, shimmering tears reflecting an incomprehensible anguish. But beneath that familiar exterior was a grotesque mask of despair, her mouth twisted in a silent scream. "Cassandra!" she cried, her voice sharp with desperation. "You must remember. You left me." Her words reverberated, pulling me deeper into the void of my own nightmares. She raised a trembling finger towards the corner of the room, where a dark silhouette seamlessly merged with the shadows, its gaze fixed on me. I recognized that presence, the very same that had crept into my childhood, feeding on my fears. A guttural growl emanated from the shadows, and the air thickened around me. "She cannot help you now," the creature snarled. "She is but a vessel for my eternal wrath." That I felt the walls close in, pressing against my chest like a vice. "Lily, I can help you," I cried out, but she merely shook her head, her face dissolving into a mask of sorrow. "You have to leave," she urged, her voice breaking. "Get out!" Before the creature lunged towards her, its form shifting into a torrent of ink and malice. "Enough of this weakness!" it roared, its voice a cacophonous blend of hundreds, all fused into a singular, soul-chilling note. The ground cracked beneath my feet as I instinctively took a step back. The flickering light above swayed violently, and with it, a wave of darkness surged forth, washing over me like a cold tide. In an instant, I was transported to another room, the walls lined with mirrors, reflecting the chaotic emotions coursing through me. I could hear the whispers intensifying, pulling me toward the various reflections of my past me childhood filled with shadows and laughter, entangled in a web of neglect and affection that had led me to this moment. Look at what you became, a voice echoed from the mirrors. You ran away when they needed you. We all did. My breath hitched, realizing with horror that these faces were fragments of my own different versions of myself, each representing a choice I had made, a path untrodden, a trust betrayed. Suddenly, the mirrors cracked one by one, each fracture causing reverberations that rattled my bones. With every crack, a new shadow was born, clawing its way out, each bearing the face of someone I had lost, each a testament to the consequences of my actions. Run all you want, Cassandra. But the truth is always closer than you think, they taunted, their voices merging into a single sinister laugh that echoed incessantly in my skull. The air grew thick with despair, and I felt my resolve teeter. I needed to escape, to find some semblance of reality. As I turned to flee, one of the mirrors shattered fully, and from its depths emerged a cloaked figure, its features obscured by shadows. Do you wish to see her? It asked, its voice low like the rumbling of thunder, filled with sweet promises and hidden malice. Or will you cower in the depths of your guilt? My heart pounded as I stared into the abyss of that fragmented mirror, the decision weighing heavily upon me. I realized, perhaps too late, that to face the truth may be the only way to break free from the grasp of this nightmarish prison, but just before I made my choice, a figure burst forth from behind, yanking me back with a strength that seemed of this world and the next. Whirling around, I was met with the last face I ever expected to see. Cassandra, run! It cried, as the darkness surged, threatening to consume us both. I felt the world tilt, the shadows coiling thin, nothing but a blinding flash of light, leaving me in an endless void, with the whisper of a name brushing my ears. Lily. They say shadows hold secrets, twisted tales bound to the souls that wander too close. I had discovered that truth the night I found that haunted live stream, one that would drag me to the brink of my deepest fears and beyond. The mirror was not just a gateway, it was a web of lives intertwined, each trapped, each longing for someone to hear their screams, a cacophony of despair silenced beneath the surface. But here I stood, enveloped in darkness that welcomed me home, embracing the weight of all those lost souls in the depths of my mind. As I gazed into the dim reflections surrounding me, I felt a chill sweep through my body like icy tendrils clawing at my spirit. Each figure that materialized bore the face of regret, and I recognized them all, the family I had failed, friends left behind, every shadow that whispered of a different path. My thoughts spiraled as they chorused, you chose this fate. And then, amidst the swirling chaos, there she was, Lily, my sister. Her trembling figure pulled me back into focus. Eyes wide with terror, a knowing that dragged me down. Cassandra, she whispered, her voice trembling, you have to remember, remember. The echo of her plea hung in the air, a haunting reminder of a truth I tried so hard to drown. My heart raced as I felt her presence bolstered by my own guilt. It crashed over me like a tidal wave, memories flooded in sharp relief, the day we fought, her pleading eyes when I stormed out, leaving her to face our broken home alone. Guilt wrapped around my chest, squeezing tighter as I realized the weight of her sacrifice hung over my spirit, her cries for help swallowed by my own need for escape. I am sorry. I screamed, a primal wail that pierced through the darkness. I didn't mean to leave you. The shadows convulsed, as if my words set off a catalyst of fear among them. Lily's face twisted with anguish, tears spilling silently down her cheeks, and the air thickened with the tension of unspoken truths. Suddenly, the shadows around us writhed as if ignited by my emotion. Save us! Her ghostly voice beckoned, pulling me deeper into the swirling void of grief. The figure shifted, the darkness intertwined with her essence, tightening its grasp around my spirit. "You can't save them all," a sinister voice hissed, slithering through the air. "You were never meant to escape this." Panic spurred within me, a sharp knife slicing through the suffocating dread. I needed to confront the darkness, not just the shadows pulling me into despair, but my own reflection, the version of me that had chosen solitude over the pain that came with love. "Choose," the dark figure whispered, flickering like smoke. "Be a savior or remain a prisoner." And suddenly, memories flickered to life, vibrant scenes of laughter, joiny family before the rift, moments when love shielded us from the creeping shadows. I saw the rippling threads that bound us, fragile yet unyielding. My heart surged with desperation. I needed to end this cycle, take responsibility not just for myself, but for my sister, for those who had suffered because of my choices. With trembling resolve, I turned toward the shadows as they twisted and folded, faces warping in anguish. Their torment wrapped around me, suffocating yet familiar. "I do not belong to your pain," I roared defiantly. The laughter broke through the air, wild and mocking. "You cannot resist what you are." But deep within, a flicker of strength ignited, urging me forward. "You are not my truth. I can rewrite this story." I pressed on, focused entirely on the faint light of memories, burying the guilt within me. I clawed through the shadows, arms extended toward the light, heart battling the dark fog surrounding me. That siren voice from the mirror loomed closer, and I knew I would retrieve those I lost, pulling them away from the edge of despair. My sister's memory shimmered before me, a pathway lit by sacrifice and love, and as I took a step into the light, I felt the shadows recoil, their palpable anger threatening to choke the air. "Cassandra!" I heard them scream, their voices rising into a chorus of despair. But it wasn't drowning me, it was awakening me. "Cassandra!" With a jolt, my body was launched backward through the dark void, free again, rebounding like a rubber band snapping back into place. I gasped, arms flailing, and before I knew it, I was back in my room, the glow of my screen illuminating the shadows closing in. Heart racing, I turned to face the mirror that had dragged me into this nightmare, the realization dawning all too quickly. Behind me loomed a figure, its silhouette eerily familiar, a reflection I had long stifled. I froze, unable to keep my breath from choking in my throat as the presence spoke in a voice formed of countless whispers. "It's your turn to pay," the figure hissed, drawing nearer, shadows twisting and coiling around like snakes eager to strike. That I realized too late that the darkness had always been a part of me, mistakes, my failures, but even through the fear consuming me, I felt a pulsing light deep within. The labyrinth of my guilt wouldn't define me, it wouldn't consume me. Then Lily's voice rose through the shadows, echoing softly, "You can break free." And with one last surge of determination, I turned to face the reflection, my heart beating against despair's grim grip. "No," I proclaimed, coaxing forth the light from within. "You don't own me. I will not allow you to take me." The shadow halted as if struck, wavering before the brilliant illumination that ignited and expelled the darkness like a rising sun against the night. I charged toward the mirror, plunging my hands into that shimmering surface, pulling every ounce of light and memory forward. That heartbeat, I saw their faces emerge from the shadows, those I had lost, Lily, witnessing me weave through the echoes of guilt and pain. The moment stretched into eternity, her arms outstretched, urging me onward. With a final, shattering crack, I broke through the mirror, spilling out into my reality, gasping for breath. But I could feel the lingering darkness, just beyond the edges of my consciousness, waiting for the moment to return. The truth was, I had emerged not unscathed but transformed, bruised and battered, yet holding on to the light, a fragile spark in a world wrought with shadows. They still lurked, whispering their tantalizing temptations, but now, I grasped the power to resist. As I turned slowly from the mirror that reflected my triumph and tragedy, I felt a chilling whisper brushing past my ear, echoing the words that would brand themselves into my heart forever: "We are always watching, always waiting." And I knew, in the marrow of my bones, that the horror was not behind me but forever at my side.